Now, usually, I don't make videos on such fresh topics, nor do I really make rant videos either. But I don't know, I just feel like I had to say something because, I mean, what the hell was that? So, yeah, the new Elder Scrolls Online expansion was weirdly disappointing, so let's just quickly get right into it. So, what happened here?
Do you long for having your heart rizzed?
So the last expansion for ESO was ESO Necrom, and was also part 1 to this 2-act story, which is fairly standard for ESO ever since elsewhere every new storyline comes in 2 parts. At the end, there's a third smaller act where everyone comes together from each parts of the story to save the day once and for all. Well, ESO Necrom was the first part in the Shadow over Morrowind storyline, a story about you coming to the aid of Hermaeus Mora to not just save the realm of Apocrypha, but all of reality itself, and man, was it a banger! So admittedly, ESO Necrom was the first expansion I played as it came out, because I had to beat all the other ones well after they had already released, because I'm not a day 1 player. So I was pleasantly blown away when Necrom was straight up a thrill ride full of actual unseen twists and turns in a brand new setting with some of the best characters ESO had ever produced. I mean, sure, the game has tons of great characters, the whole series has tons of great characters, but something about the gang that we got to know here was just really good. I don't know. Notably, the star of the show, Lair Morrill, a mage who is just so good at what she does, even Hermaeus Mora sees her as a confidant. On top of that, there was Scroot, the little daedra thingy, the best character ever, Meln the Mouthless, a Telvanni wizard ghost you keep in your pocket, and Gadain, this poor normal bastard who you roped into this whole mess. And he falls in love with Lair Morrill. These guys really are the heart of Necrom that make it such a good expansion. But wait, there's more. Not only did we get to see even more of Morrowind, we got to fully explore Apocrypha. Yeah, that's right, not only did we get a new landmass, we got a whole new dimension to explore. Apocrypha is bar none the most entertaining new dimension the game added since the Clockwork City. It's dripping with not only black sludge, but also atmosphere. Every inch of this place is just so interesting to look at. And it expanded Hermaeus Mora's realm from just an infinite library like we saw in Skyrim to something much more grander and still filled with books. All in all, Necrom was a great expansion, and I was so excited for the second half of this storyline. When Necrom ended on a cliffhanger that there was a forgotten, supremely powerful daedric prince that we had never heard of before, one so powerful and threatening to reality that Hermaeus Mora teamed up with a few other daedric princes to weaken her, imprison her, and then make everyone forget about her, which is about as close as killing a daedric prince as possible. I mean, I was so hyped. You need to understand, this was unprecedented. Sure, Bethesda made Jiggalag happen years ago. Another lost prince, but this one was different. He was just a twist where Sheogorath was secretly Jiggalag the whole time, and Jiggalag was basically just jumped by all the other princes and turned insane, so he became Sheogorath. Also, on top of that, that was sort of the whole selling point of that DLC of the Shivering Isles. It was save this place from the long-lost prince Jiggalag. You know, it was well known when it was going on. This was nowhere in the marketing. This was just some big secret that isn't revealed until the end. Sure, Jiggalag was also described as super powerful, but the daedra just jumped his ass because they were mad about how much of Oblivion he had controlled. These guys sealed away Prince Athelia because she was a threat to not only them and their realms, but also all of reality. These are much bigger stakes than anything involving Jiggalag ever was. And to top that off, the thing that made this extra unprecedented is that ZeniMax Online did. This was not Bethesda's doing. Now, ZeniMax Online expands lore all the time. They've done the Argonians and the Bretons a great service in expanding their lore, and especially the Bretons, but this was all new. Sure, before this, they invented a small realm in Oblivion that basically acts as an interdimensional grand central station for daedra, but there was always said to be countless realms aside from the major ones. So this is just brand new lore that they had made. When this all dropped, we had no idea where this plot was gonna go. How do we stop her? What's she all about? Can she really be that dangerous? I mean, it was a thrilling time for lore nerds like me. And I mean, look how overly dramatic I was in this video that came out around the same time. And they left us on a major cliffhanger, so there's not much to talk about it yet. But let's just say it was very unnerving to hear a character like Hermaeus Mora scared. But that was then, and this is now. So, what happened?
Did they teach you how to feel, Sigma to Sigma?
So a little bit ago, the disappointment started when we got to see the big bad Athelia, and she just looked like this, and it's just a tall woman with tattoos and crystal butterfly wings. Well, damn, that's not what I expected, but okay. The princes don't always look so grandiose. I mean, Sheogorath is just a dude, but, he's not really supposed to be that scary. Azura appears just as a Dunmer woman in a dress sometimes. I expected a little more. But it was just a trailer, so I thought, who knows, maybe there will be more. Spoilers, there isn't. There is no more. Some odd things to note about this DLC is that this expansion takes place in Cyrodiil, so not only in not a new place, but also not in Morrowind, when the story was called Shadow over Morrowind. But I mean, hey, I guess we all change our minds sometimes during the creative process. But yeah, it's just Cyrodiil, just a small part of Cyrodiil. Now, I love Cyrodiil, but it was pretty cool in the last one where we got to explore somewhere where we haven't seen, except, in the 2D games. I don't know, I guess I was just expecting something a little extra, and maybe we were supposed to get that with the new jungle in the area, but that was so underwhelming, I want to cry, and I'll get onto that later. So let me break down all my issues in a more concise manner here. Number 1, the characters. So, remember a few minutes ago when I said that the group of characters in Necrom were really the heart of that DLC? Well, it's definitely not the same in this DLC. In this, you team up with the single most generic elf and guard character ever. We have Baragon, a plucky, well-traveled adventurer who is about as deep as my description, and this Imperial Guard woman, who was even more generic, so much so that I don't even remember her name. See, her role is that she doesn't like that the Wood Elves are encroaching in the area, and also she's kind of stern. Blairmaril is here, but she might as well not be. She's so underused, it's crazy. 90% of the time, while we're running around with Baragon, she is stuck back in his giant-ass townhouse that is just sort of ponders most of the DLC and doesn't really do much. Sometimes she's out with you, but for the vast majority of the time, you're stuck with Baragon. Meanwhile, last time, she was with you all the time. Baragon and the Imperial Guard woman aren't terrible, they're just so boring, especially in comparison to the last group. They feel like characters you'd encounter in a long side quest, and that's it. It's just the 3 of them for the entire DLC, and for the vast majority of the time, it's just these 2, not even Blairmaril. That leads me on to my next point, stories and missions. So ESO isn't the craziest when it comes to quests. You're always going to be going somewhere to fight someone to get something at some point. Usually, if it's that simple, it's somewhere cool and you find out something important, but in the Gold Road, it's just nothing. For the majority of the DLC, Baragon just says, you need to go check out these 3 different places, and he just keeps sending you to like 3 different locations. And then you go fight some people and you find out nothing. You learn nothing, man. It's like, whoa, dude, are you trying to tell me that Hermaeus Mora and Athelia argued multiple times before he locked her up? That's so crazy, dude. Next, you're gonna tell me she was resistant to the idea of being in prison forever. Whoa! To rub salt upon wounds here, the majority of the time you aren't even dealing with Athelia, except in one quest where you have to do a weird minigame where you make her a drink. But no, for the vast majority of the time, you're dealing with the implied politics of the Bosmer encroaching onto the Westweald in that mysterious forest. Like, sure, yeah, I get to burn down an entire tree fort. That was cool, I guess. But then it was just more like drama about the Bosmer encroaching in the weird forest. The forest that quickly became very, very super lame. And this is partly on me for having ideas in my head from before the expansion came out. But I mean, come on, I know I'm not the only person who had this idea. So one of the first things you'll probably learn about when you take a deep dive into the Elder Scrolls lore for the first time is that Tiber Septim, Talos, achieved Chim. And Chim is a whole rabbit hole on its own, and I'm not going to cover it here, but basically he used that power to remove all of the forests and jungles that covered Cyrodiil from ever existing. He just sort of snapped them out of ever happening, all because the Imperials were complaining they had a hard time hunting in them. And this is supposed to demonstrate just how powerful he is, because if the jungles were always there, then why would the Imperials, the native population, have a hard time hunting in their native land? But they would have never asked him to do something about it if they were never there, blah blah blah. Time loop doesn't matter, Talos power. But then the DLC comes out, and there's suddenly these foresty jungle areas mysteriously springing up overnight in Cyrodiil, and in an area where a daedric prince who has the power to change fate and reality at whim is, sort of wandering around. So a bunch of people, me included, came to think that maybe this would be a cool reference to show just how unstable things had become, that, whoa, she's gonna be undoing things that hadn't even happened yet because Tiber Septim wouldn't be born for like another 200 years. But no, Athelia's minions gave a Bosmer cult some evil magic seeds to make this happen so they can take over Westweald. Just so boring. And that's the thing, she doesn't fucking do anything. The closest we got to seeing her crazy powers are when we get to speak to some alternate versions of her, which are nowhere near as cool as it sounds. They keep going on and on about how unstable reality is, but nothing happens besides some tiny tears in reality that don't do anything, and people just point at him and go, oh, isn't that crazy? Reality's about to fall apart. But this happens like twice. You see like these tears like 2 times before the DLC is over. And thirdly, everything is just so underwhelming. Like I said, nothing ever happens in this DLC. Sure, we get to fight her and her minion, but she just surrenders and then we banish her to a reality without magic, which was really weird, and let's never expand upon that, please. That opens up too many annoying conversations. And even when things are supposed to be exciting and crazy, they just aren't. They tried to have another moment like when you're storming the Crystal-like Law in Somerset. You use a ballista to blow open a door or whatever. But instead of this exciting moment where you're all rushing to the top of the tower and you blow down a door and it's fun, you just sort of stand on top of this fort and fire it very slowly at waves of Daedra who stand there and do nothing until you kill them. Yeah, it's not really consequential at all. And I genuinely do not even remember why we are trying to save this fort. I don't think it ever comes back up. Just everything is a step back from Necrom. I mean, Meln doesn't even return except for a cameo at the end where he says one line at the dance party ending that happens at the end of every storyline. Like, there's been not as good follow-ups to first half of stories, and there's been stories that are just kind of lame entirely. Storylines like Greymoor. The Greymoor storyline is really underwhelming when compared to the other ones. Both sides are fairly consistent, and the characters and settings are both equally good. It's just not as good as the other ones. This was a follow-up to one of, if not the best expansions so far. I mean, the legacy of the Breton storyline is 90% politics and is so much better than this thing. That's because High Isle and Firesong are actually just really fucking good. I thought they'd be really boring, but it's like my second favorite storyline. Either way, how does the legacy of the Bretons, nobody's favorite race in this series, how is that storyline infinitely more thrilling and fun than a story about defeating a lost daedric prince? How did you make it so boring? How did you do this? It's a feat, honestly. I guess if you combine them, overall, the story had an amazingly strong first half. So sort of just equals out to the whole storyline being good, I guess. I'm sure the next one will be great. This isn't a whole doom and gloom, ESO has fallen, millions must play Final Fantasy XIV video. The story bits that are left up in the air that we can expand upon are still there. Namely, the story bit with Lyrinth. I mean, like, come on, we cannot just leave that ominous cliffhanger alone. We gotta expand upon that in a DLC at some point. I mean, come on, guys, I can't put her in my house till that's resolved now, can I? I was just hoping for a bit more from this DLC, you know, but at least they tied up Athelia's story very well. No real loose ends. She's never gonna come back. Nobody can ever get to her. She banished all her powers to the void, whatever that means. And hey, there was a neat thing. Her assistant got killed. Like, he's dead. The first ever, like, real death for a Daedra permanent we've ever seen. So, I mean, hey, Torvasard gets that, and Torvasard was probably the best character in this second half, even though he was in the first half, but, you know, he was still good in this second half, so he gets a good legacy. I don't think we're ever going to be destroying another Daedric prince like we did her, banishing her to another reality and all that. But maybe this is a new step with ZeniMax. Maybe we'll see more brand new big stuff like Athelia. I just hope they stick the landing next time. And with that, this weird, unplanned video is over. Go follow my Twitter and Newgrounds for art, especially the Twitter. I'm looking at you. Go follow it right now. Come on, you won't regret it probably. Anyway, see you later.